Hi there. Welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. In this podcast, I interview successful business leaders and industry experts to help you grow your business. In this episode, my guest is Stephen Goldberg, president of Optimus Performance, leadership training and management consulting firm. He's been helping business leaders to achieve their goals and objectives when it comes to employee productivity or company performance. He also has a YouTube channel where he has over 450 videos for business leaders to understand team performance and company performance and how to hit the peak performance when it comes to achieving your goals and objectives. Now, we had a very interesting discussion on many different topics around the company performance or a team performance. But Stephen talks about it all starts from what can a business leaders do to make sure that they have the right people on the right seat, and so they can get that performance and achieve their goals and objectives, what they're trying to do with each department. And he shares some of his assessments and some other tools as well. What can business leaders do to make sure that first of all is the right person on the right seat, and then enable them to achieve the goals and objectives that align with the business goals. If you like this content, don't forget to send me your feedback and subscribe to this channel. Until next time, please welcome Stephen Goldberg. Hi guys, welcome to Business Leadership Podcast. Today my guest is Stephen Goldberg. Stephen, the area of your expertise that has changed a lot over the last few years. So I'm looking forward to our discussion, learning from you. Thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and engage with you.
Welcome. So if you can just summarize for our audience, walk us through what do you see some of those biggest challenges for the last few years. We've gone through so many changes, working remotely, working hybrid or in office. There's so many changes that happen, when managing employees, it's been more critical than ever. So if you just highlight, what are some of the challenges you see for over the last few years?
Well, one of the biggest ones that's been talked a lot about is the workforce and the challenge in hiring staff, qualified, skilled staff, because of the pandemic and the repercussion of that. There's different terms people use for that. The great work recognizing, or, people stepping away, working hybrid, questioning what they're doing. There's stats that go back in time and still true today that up to half of the workforce are doing work that they didn't study for, but that they shifted into because everybody's seeking satisfaction in life, and work is part of life. And if we're not happy doing what we're doing, if we don't like who we're working for, we're going to shift into something else. And I think the pandemic gave an opportunity for that. And a lot of people didn't want to work for low wages anymore. So I think the whole, workforce landscape has changed. Finding enough people has been a challenge, and still ongoing, especially in very niche, highly skilled areas where, a company that is a medium-sized company is competing with, the larger companies. Take a software programmer or IT specialist. You're competing with some of the bigger brand names that people line up to try and get jobs in. And so you need to find strategies to both retain and retain your employees and attract the right talent as well. So that's one of the biggest issues that we've been experiencing over the years. And the other one is just adapting to the changing workforce, the cultural aspect. A lot of people have come to Canada with a different ethnic background. Cultural perceptions are different. And how do they adapt and integrate into the workforce? And also the whole fact that people working hybrid, how do you manage, that approach from having people come into the office every day to people working part-time from home, part-time in the office, that whole transition. So things have been disrupted, and, managing employees and having them being fully productive has always been a challenge, but I think it's been exacerbated because of the pandemic and and the changes with technology.
You mentioned so many good points there, Stephen. Trying to unpack how, there's so many points that I want to go.
And even leadership has a lot to do with those topics.
Yeah.
We look at the external circumstances that are driving these challenges, but a lot of the challenges also are driven by our own style of leadership, our own self-awareness of how we manage, how we lead people. And, the more that can shift in the right direction, the better we're able to tackle those challenges that I just mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with one, but first with the competitive advantage. I seen that firsthand as well. The pause is very real. People had a pause; they had a time to think about it. You point to that they find a different career or they move a little slightly in a different career. That's very real because a lot of people had a time to reskill themselves or retool themselves during this pandemic. They had a time to think. Do they really enjoy the work they are doing? So definitely, I see a little bit shift in finding out the true work people really want to do and shifting a little bit career or readjusting a little bit what area they want to get into. So having said that, so where do you see some of the competitive strategies people use to acquire those skill set? You mentioned that, competitive advantage, whether it's an offshore skill set that people try to acquire or they're trying to, offer more of perks to work from home. And what do you see some of those, tools or techniques people use to stay competitive in this market?
Well, there's the physical tools, the perception of what you're getting in exchange for what you have now if you're an employee. And then there's the non-physical or the emotional, psychological component. So a lot of people, there's an old study by Gallup that was done actually in the 90s, but the data hasn't shifted much. And one of the core concepts that came out of it was that, and it was about, retention of staff and managing staff. And one of the things that stood out was a statement they made that people leave poor relationships or leave a boss, not a job. So somebody may enjoy their job and be, engaged with it, but there's a conflict at work with either the boss or a disagreement or with a team member or whatever. And, this can cause emotional, psychological drama, and people want to avoid that because it's discomforting to go into work every day and have to deal with somebody that you don't like or that you're resenting. So it's really part of the strategy has to be to create a workplace, a culture that supports good relationships, that supports mutual support. When you look at a sports team, the best sports team doesn't always have the best talent, but they have excellent chemistry and, people support each other. They care about each other. So fostering that type of a culture of a climate is something really important, but maybe not on the agenda of every small, medium-sized business. And then how to go about doing that can be challenging as well. So that's one thing on the emotional side. The other part of that is to provide a coaching style of leadership. And what I mean by that is not coaching on the fly, but taking time to meet people on a regular basis, one-on-one. So if I'm a manager of a department and I have 10 direct reports, part of my job, if I want to foster more teamwork and build trust with my team members and my direct reports so that we build a solid relationship that they're going to, think twice about leaving, even if it's for more money, then I need to sit down and meet with them and talk about them, not talk about the job necessarily, but talk about where they see themselves going. How satisfied are they with the work? What challenges are they facing? What can they do to develop themselves? Employees need to also take responsibility for their own development and not just depend on what the company's going to do for them. So if you engage in those types of discussions, now you're coaching somebody, you're building trust, you're building a relationship, and people will value that. So that's on the psychological, emotional side. So shifting to a more coaching style of leadership, taking a participative style of leadership too, where you get people involved in decision-making so they feel more ownership for their jobs and more having an impact on where the company is going and the decisions being made. And so those are very important. I think companies don't pay enough attention to that, especially smaller companies. On the physical side, obviously, you want to attract people, with that shining objects and, a nice workplace, what other perks you could add in to be competitive. I mean, you need to be competitive with your size of company in your industry, as far as money, or you may not be able to always compete with the larger companies, especially when it comes to perks and benefits where they have exercise rooms or, free lunch. I have a neighbor who got a job with a medium-sized company, and they have subsidized lunches, and they have a chef that comes in, and the lunches cost them almost nothing, and it's really healthy, good food. So that's an attractive thing. But even if you have all those perks, if you don't have covered the relationship, the emotional component, people, if they're approached by a headhunter, which is very common, especially if they have very negotiable skills or transferable skills that are really sought after in the marketplace, they will listen. They'll and today people have lots of ways to assess the company with Glassdoor, Indeed, Google reviews. People aren't shy anymore to leave reviews about their experience working somewhere. So and people pay attention to that, just like we do when we're looking to buy a new product, that there's a lot of competition, a lot of options. We're going to read people's reviews. It's basically their experience with that product. So it's the same thing with jobs. So you need to make sure that you're covered on both sides, that you're competitive with your perks, with your pay, but also that you create a workplace that is attractive to what people are looking for today in terms of that psychological, emotional component.
So let's talk about the psychological and emotional component. That's very interesting, because that's not easy to build. It requires a lot of hard work. Did that create more challenges, for last few years when you work in remotely, when you work in a hybrid environment or in office, is a different style, different way of connecting with the people, I guess, right? So do business leaders need to polish some of the skill set, how they manage people, how they connect with, listen to these people a little better? Or has that changed a little bit during the last few years or got more important?
Well, I think it's always been important. I think it's gotten and getting more important because we've moved from the Industrial Revolution where people were treated like machines. Now we have machines that people manage. So people want to be treated more like a human than a machine. They don't want to be commoditized. They want to be respected for the experience and the intelligence they bring to the job, and they want to be able to contribute their intelligence, And intelligence isn't always just about education. It's about, combining your intuition, your thinking, your emotions, along with your education and your experience, and your caring. If somebody really enjoys their work, well, they could bring so much more than just even if it's a physical job, they can bring ideas. And I mentioned before about participative leadership is a style of leadership where on one hand you have an autocratic style of leadership, which was, really came out of the Industrial Revolution. People were told what to do. Maybe they were even paid for piecework or whatever. So it was very, directed, very supervised. And we've moved to a model where people are using more their intellectual skills and have more freedom to use those skills to create and develop things. You think of programmers or whatever, and they have more freedom to manage their own time. So the leader, that's great. You give people more freedom, more responsibility. But on the other side, the participative leadership is the opposite end. You could say democratic, but I don't like a totally democratic type of leadership. I think you need to sometimes be autocratic. You need to tell people what to do, especially more of a new employee. But you want to move towards a participative leadership style where you engage people and draw ideas from them, get them involved in continuous improvement and problem solving, teach them how to do that. It's not that difficult. So, sometimes you need to be autocratic or more controlling or in the middle, but you want to definitely have it as a leadership style to become more participative so that people feel like their voice is being heard. And it's not just about their little job, but it's about what they can contribute to improvements in the organization. So that's one thing. But in order for an organization to develop that type of culture, it has to start at the top. The leader needs to have that vision, understanding that this is a good thing to do and that it's going to reap benefits for them as a leader and also for the organization and the employees, so everybody can win. And it starts with some, that process of leadership. It starts with self-understanding, self-knowledge. What is my makeup? What are my tendencies? In light of being more of a coach, having a coaching style, more engaging in participative type activities. What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? What is my makeup? And how can I leverage my strengths? What do I do about my shortcomings in relation to that? So it's all about the situation and knowing myself and how I can navigate towards becoming a better leader that will drive greater engagement, build better relationships. So it's a process, and it starts with the leader himself. Because if you try and train that into your managers without the leader understanding what that process is about and committing to it himself, I don't think you're going to go very far. It's going to fail.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. I think that's where especially I happen to hire a lot of younger talent. They freshly coming out of universities. They almost demand that you have that kind of style of leadership. They're looking for that kind of company has a purpose. The company has some sort of directions. What direction they go in? What kind of leader they have in a company? So they're asking those questions, and I think it's very important. But let me share one of the challenges I see that in my industry, and maybe you touched on a little bit before that, and I want to talk about the soft skills you mentioned, especially in where we are in Ontario. That a lot of talents coming from internationally, whether a lot of from India, a lot of from China, especially in the tech industry. Great technical skills, but a little bit short on the soft skills. That creates a challenge when you're trying to manage these people. Sometimes it creates communication barriers. Sometimes it creates some of the, some of those, you mentioned that intellectually try to connect with these people, those challenges, because they're translating from a different language, from different culture. So there's always a gap. How do you handle that problem? How do you train for that? Or how do you help people out in that area where you can connect with them on a level that you want to connect with?
So, there's, the world is becoming very integrated in terms of cultures, ethnicity. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Ethnicity. So people with different cultural backgrounds, different languages, but fundamentally, we're all the same. Going back to what I was saying at the beginning, that we all seek satisfaction. If we become discomfort, if we're experiencing discomfort, if it's too hot, like it's been here, very, very hot outside, we want to go inside where there's air conditioning. I can't even take my dog outside, but it's too hot. He just wants to turn around and go home and sleep and, wait for cooler weather. So we're very sensitive human beings. And, as soon as we experience some discomfort, we want to avoid it, right? And move towards pleasure and balance. So understanding that ultimately everybody's the same at the core, we all are looking to be treated well, to grow, especially today. People realize that things are changing so quickly in the workplace because of technology, job skills, automation, that you need to continuously update your skill set, especially if you're worried about, how strong your employer is in terms of their financial capacity to weather storms or whatever. So, people aren't that complacent. They're always, I read an article, I made a video about this, that the average time somebody stays on a job these years is 4.1 years. So
I thought it was less than that. But that's very
average across demographics. So people have a lot of opportunity, and that's, we thought it would slow down after the pandemic or even during the pandemic, but it's just keeps accelerating the search for good talent. So people can be very mobile. I think it's slowing down a bit. I think, companies are slowing down a bit in their hiring, and it's getting a bit tougher for job seekers. But, I think just leaders need to connect with people at the most human level and understand that really we're all the same. We're all seeking happiness, contentment in whatever we do. I mean, it's not always going to be happy and content. You're going to have challenges that you have to work through. But if they feel they're being supported and they're being developed because they're recognized that they have the right talent to contribute, then they'll be able to navigate whatever tough waters that they're experiencing. So really the support, is the leader, is the management team, to give people that confidence that they're there for them and that they're going to help them navigate whatever difficult situations there are, as long as the person is doing the best they can to contribute and to perform. So it's about taking the time to get to know each person, understand them, talk to them, and then, find solutions to problems or to differences. Clarity is a big factor in making sure that both you are clear of what it is that needs to be done, that needs to be communicated, that, when, where, how, so if you have regular sessions and meetings with people and you clarify what direction you are going in, how they can support that in terms of their contribution to the company, I don't think the cultural differences is huge. I mean, obviously some people grow up in a very autocratic type of country maybe, and and they always wait to be told what to do because in the past they've been reprimanded for making an error, and their fear of making a mistake is very strong. So you have to coach that out of them, and with time they'll transition to a style that they can trust, that they won't be reprimanded, if they make a small mistake or any mistake, that, there's understanding and that there's support there.
Yeah. I had a discussion with a lot of business leaders over the last, last few months, but, everybody's, because the labor shortages we were dealing with in Ontario, right? So simply, a lot of people are dealing with that. It was a challenge between, I know my industry suffers a lot with the soft skill side of things. There's a lot of You can find a great tech skills because that's what we're doing for Interior Tech Hub, but always short on a soft side of skills. And then there's a few small percentage of people they're from job to job. They every opportunity they find they want to jump to the next opportunities, right? So when that kind of transactions happen, it definitely put employers on a little spot that how do we maintain the services? How do we maintain that kind of level of service to our clients? Because we have that kind of flux in you trying to grow a company, trying to scale a company back to the revenue level. So Steve, let's talk about soft skills. Especially in my industries, I hire a lot of technical people. I know a lot of business leaders were watching, listening to us. We all hire a technical, skill set, but soft skill, these become a little bit more important over the last few years, especially when you're working from home or a lot of customer service focus. What are your thoughts on how companies find out what the soft skills are, how they evaluate it? Can they be coachable? So how do companies go about this when they're trying to assess people on the soft skills?
So let's define soft skills. What do we mean by that? So you have, I guess, hard skills and soft skills. Everybody has those and can be developed. So hard skills are the skills you need to perform your job. So if you're, let's say, a software programmer, you need to learn programming, and probably you should like math because that will fuel your desire to learn and to apply what you learn. Mm-hmm. So that's an essential part of the job. Another hard skill would be just computers, right? Understanding how computers work if it's an integral part of your job. So those skills are ongoing development because everything, especially today, everything's changing so quickly that everybody needs to stay up to date. But on the other side, there's the soft skills. And those are things like listening, communicating, giving feedback, working as a team. There's skills involved there as well. And really the listening and communicating, how to confront people. There's always potential for conflicts to arise when people disagree. So how do you resolve that? And again, it's really the listening and communicating, empathy, and these are all things we all possess. We all possess those skills. Some people have them naturally in greater quantity than others. Some people prefer to work alone and avoid interaction with each other. So the key again is to understand who you're working with. If you're hiring, there's assessments you can use. We have assessments that companies can use to help them better understand who they're hiring to go beyond just the hard skills for the job, because that you could see in the resume, in their education, in the interview. You can ask them technical questions to gauge their knowledge of those skills. But when it comes to the soft skills, in an hour interview, people could present themselves as an extrovert or very social, but maybe they're not that social, but they're just being that way because they want to impress you for the interview, or they want to present the best side of themselves. So assessments can help you. It's kind of like the iceberg effect. When you see an iceberg in the ocean, you're seeing this mass of ice, but it's actually only 10% of the iceberg. 90% of the mass is below the surface and you can't see it. You need an instrument to go down and see how big it is. And that's what an assessment does. It allows you to go beneath the surface of what the person is showing you or presenting you on paper and see what potential soft skills they have. If it's somebody you're hiring or promoting to a management position, obviously if it's somebody, an employee, you already know them better. But to determine how good they are with the soft skills, with listening, with being empathetic, with coaching people, that's where the assessment can help as well, because it'll The one we use measures somebody's thinking style. So there's a cognitive function to it. There's a behavioral, or it shows you what their personality makeup is in behavioral terms. And then it also shows you their occupational interests. So if you want somebody, and I mentioned this before, to take on a coaching style of leadership where they're building trust, they're coaching people, they're showing interest in people, they should have a high interest in people. And our assessment can help determine that, other assessments as well. And then you want to be able to see how they score on other personality traits as well. Mm-hmm. And more soft skills are becoming imperative in the workplace, especially when it comes to teamwork. Because true teamwork, when you empower a team, it's about having them become more autonomous. So they need less supervision, less direction. As the team evolves, they can actually take on higher level decision-making, even management decision-making. I worked with a company where the team actually hired another team member. Management was involved as part of the team, but they made a decision based on a consensus. So the team was empowered. If you want teams to function more autonomously, they need to develop those soft skills of communication, of listening, of problem solving, so they can come to consensus. And more, as we want teamwork in the workplace to drive continuous improvement and autonomy, those soft skills have to be provided or developed, because we all have them. It's about developing and finding out who has, where people's strengths and challenges may be.
So for leaders, so not only they need to have a very high level soft skills, but they need to train people, and they need to develop that in a teams as well. What you're mentioning, that they got to teach those soft skills as well, as similar to as a coach, that so those people start picking up on a soft skill by themselves instead of depending on our leaders to catch up with it.
Absolutely. I mean, often I talk to leaders, business owners. They don't really understand what teamwork is. Their definition sometimes of teamwork is that people are getting along, they like each other. Yes, that's an important component to drive teamwork, but they need to grow to become more autonomous, and that's where the soft skills. So every organization should, if they want to move towards a more participative, a teamwork-driven type of organization, they need to provide that training so people can evolve in their teams and function more independently.
Very interesting. I want to get your take. What do you recommend in this? I always happen to, I believe, I hire a lot of young people, and they come with the great technical skills, especially from overseas. And we have a saying that, hard skills easily teachable. We can teach somebody how to fix something, but it's a soft skill that needs a lot more work. What are your thoughts on it? Is it hard skill? If I'm making a decision on a candidate, should I compromise on a little bit of hard skills, or should I, be making a little bit compromise on a soft skills? What is that balance that you have to find between those two skills that you get a match in order to hire the perfect candidate for yourself?
Well, the hard skills are essential. And the more knowledge-based the job, the more technical, you must have the right hard skills match. You need those. Otherwise, the person won't be able to perform the job, and you may not be able to teach them those hard skills in a fair amount of time to have them perform. So once you have the hard skills and you have, let's say, 4 seemingly good candidates, that's where you need to assess, okay, if soft skills are an important part of this. Because in some jobs, like maybe they're working alone most of the time, and the soft skills aren't as crucial for somebody, let's say, in a technical customer service role, where they have to know the technology to a certain degree, maybe not as much as a programmer, let's say. because then you could scale up that customer service level, but they need to be able to interact with a client. And sometimes clients are upset, sometimes they're aggressive. And that's where the soft skills at that point would come in, learning to ask the right questions, calming the person down, showing empathy, building their trust, and then, of course, listening, all those things combined. So it's really relative to the job that you're hiring for, but you must have the technical skills unless you could train them into people very quickly, enough time for them to perform adequately to meet your expectations. So it's really job specific, I would say. And obviously, like I said, if you want to move towards more build autonomous teams, then the soft skills component would be more important for people entering that team. And you want to consider that. And that's where probably using an assessment will help you better understand the person's makeup and what their tendencies are. Some people have very strong soft skills naturally, and are poor technically, So you couldn't hire them for a technical job, even though they make everybody feel good. They wouldn't perform, right?
Yeah. You mentioned assessment again. Can assessment test mindset as well, Steve? I know a lot of business leaders I talk to, for them companies, they look for mindset. If the person has a right mindset to adapt my company culture or my workplace or my style of work, can assessment also get into mindset?
Yes, it can. When you interview somebody, you're actually assessing their mindset. And this is a soft skill that leaders have. When you're doing an interview, you're using your emotional intelligence, you're using your instinctive intelligence, because probably once you bring them in for an interview, you've figured from their resume, their experience, that they probably can do the job technically or with the hard skills. So now you bring them into the interview and you want to get a feel for the person. This is where you're using your emotional intelligence and your instinctiveness as well. You're feeling the person. How do they present themselves? How do they speak? How do I feel? There's a lot of intelligence that's transmitted. That's why I like getting somebody in the same room, because it's not the same on Zoom or on, a video conference. You don't get those same neurons being transmitted, that chemistry. And that's where your instinctiveness really kicks in. But you don't want to rely on that totally, because we're all biased to a certain degree. If I like you and you're applying for a job and I feel good about you, we have a good conversation, maybe we have similar interests even outside of work. As people put their hobbies on their resumes, you could start talking about that just to warm up. If I like you, I may favor you over somebody else who I don't connect with as much. And that's where an assessment, like I said, can help you see the things that you're either biased or not seeing. And there are, I use two assessments. One is called the Step 1 survey, and the other is the PXT Select. I'm a strategic business partner with Wiley Group, which owns those assessments. So I'm a reseller for that. Yeah. And the Step 1 survey I like because it measures people's attitude towards work. So their work ethic, their integrity, their reliability in terms of being relied upon by others to, do what they say they're going to do. And also in the US, not in Canada, it also measures substance abuse. The laws don't permit us to, so we have a different one for Canada and the US. But I like using that even prior to the first interview, once I go through the resumes, because then I could see, well, who has the best work ethic? Who scores high in reliability? Who scores high on integrity? That's going to be my number one candidate. and, on my short list. And then I'm going to bring them in and get the feel for the person, and then use my second assessment to go and see the full picture of the person. That's really putting all your resources to work for you, is using the tools, using your intelligences all together. You have a much, much higher chance of hiring a top performer. It's not just hiring an average performer. We all want to hire a top performer. But to do that, you need the right information and you need the right skill set too.
Yeah, this is an area where most business leaders I know, we make the biggest mistakes. I mean, any wrong hire, financially how much it costs you, it puts you behind in your goals. And definitely these are the biggest mistakes we make, and we keep making those mistakes over the time, right?
I made them a lot in the past, especially hiring salespeople. They're good at selling themselves. You connect, there's good chemistry, and then they flop. Everything they said was a lie. They believed it, but they couldn't perform it. Yeah. So I know I've been down that road because I grew up in a family business where I became a manager without any training, really just shadowing other people and who were probably never trained as well. So that's what I realized, that, geez, I'm making so many mistakes in management and leadership, that I hired a coach. Is going way back before even the word coach was. Mm-hmm. It was more training, one-on-one training. And it had a huge impact on me, and I saw the benefit. And that's why I got into this field, was my own experience. So it's there's three things I say for getting top results from people. Yeah. The first thing is you need to hire the right person for the job. And that's why I'm saying taking the time, using all your tools and resources, investing in an assessment is really key, because you're going to get that added information. Data is king today, right? Yep. We use it for everything. Mm-hmm. A lot of, especially small, medium-sized companies, still don't use the right assessment tool for hiring. Sometimes they'll use an assessment tool, but it could be like a Myers-Briggs, which is a good tool, but it shouldn't be used for hiring. It's not the right tool. Our tool, we create a performance model for the job, and then we can match the person to that performance model. And the performance model can even be based on your top performers that you already have. So it's like cloning them, finding somebody with those similar traits. So that's the first step. The second thing is training and coaching of people. And this is where soft skill training comes in, ongoing technical training. You should train the hell out of people. Yeah. Keep training them, because this is going to grow their confidence. It's going to grow their autonomy. So you could delegate more stuff to them. Because if you're bogged down doing the work that your managers or employees should be doing, you don't have time to scale your business, because that takes stepping away, thinking, looking at the terrain, at where you want to go, even deciding where you want to go. It all takes time. You can't decide that working and solving problems every day in your business. You need time away. And the only way to do that is to have the right people, have them well-trained, keep giving them new challenges and assignments so that they keep growing and feel engaged, and then develop your leadership. So the leadership part is the third piece, and that's the leader developing himself, having time away, building that vision, that strategy, identifying areas in the business where the improvement is required. So you're removing the obstacles for growth, for acquisitions or whatever.
Yeah, these are these three items you mentioned. These are, I think a lot of people underestimate these three items. I mean, these items are the most time-consuming items which you just mentioned. Hiring the right person, coaching and training. This is the hard work. I can see my business. It takes about 50% of my time just in these three items. And
Once you get people up to a certain level through the training and coaching them, you don't have to. Now you're freeing up the time because you're able to delegate. Now, delegation is different than assigning. So you're able to assign everything you can to those people because it doesn't take training. You've already trained them.
Right.
Delegation is a little bit different. Delegation is about giving more responsibility. There's a training and coaching component to that. So that does take more time. But once you get people to a certain level, then you're freeing up time to work on the strategies, on the higher level stuff that often business owners or, CEOs of small, medium-sized business especially don't get enough time to do. They're too caught up in the day-to-day, solving problems. So, yeah, you need
very
to
interesting.
find the time for that.
Yeah, no, I think this is where that time needs to go. And I'm at the still stage where training people and coaching on a daily basis, finding the right people. A lot of business colleagues, I know they probably looked, they have a difference of opinion on this. I know a lot of business leaders, they have an HR department that hire people. They don't want to get involved in a hiring. You mentioned distinctive feel of another person when sitting down in the same room making decision. But I know a lot of CEOs, they will just have they will simply say, hey, my HR person is going to hire a team. I never understood why would they let somebody join the company without understanding the sitting down across the table with the person saying, hey, listen, this is what I'm looking for, and getting the feel before they make a decision.
The HR department can do the recruiting, and if you're sized enough to have that, that's great. But the manager, the leader of the department, should be involved in the final decision and make the decision if it's a team with the HR, is this the right person for the job? Yeah. And the HR should be providing the assessments, or the manager should, if he's savvy enough, take responsibility to see what's out there and go to his boss and say, look, I want to use this tool. It's going to cost this. And, I need this to make sure that I'm hiring the right person. I don't want to just rely on my intuition and my emotion, my feelings. I want to know more about the person, because the assessment is also going to help coach the person. The more I understand somebody that I need to coach and develop, the more I'm able to customize, adapt myself to that person.
Very interesting. So let's talk about your journey, Steve. How do you get involved into this, and how do you get so good at this subject?
Well, a lot of years, but as I mentioned, my dad was an entrepreneur. He started a business in the basement of our house. He was selling auto parts for somebody else. Him and another salesman decided to launch their own. Mm-hmm. And they started from home. They quickly built a sizable business. And I worked, he used to take me when I was actually 6 years old. He would take me before he started the business to visit customers with him. He used to work Saturday morning. So he taught me work ethic. Mm-hmm. And then as I grew through the business, he had me do every job. It was auto parts distribution. So I would, work in the warehouse, just receiving items, learning how to put them into inventory, then learn how to pick orders. Everything was manual on paper at the time. And then eventually my dad was quite ahead of his time. He was one of the first in the industry of auto parts distribution to bring in a computer, these huge machines at the time. And I then went to order desk, and then he put me at 18 on the road selling. And then I became sales manager. I didn't know what I was doing. And then eventually I decided to hire a coach, as I mentioned, and it was a trainer who I went through a 6-month training with him. And I fell in love with training and development. I felt that was my calling. And we we sold the family business, and I got into the training. At the time, we called it training and development, and that was about 28 years ago.
Wow. A lot of experience. Yeah, no, definitely a lot of experience. You gone through this wealth of knowledge. There's so much to learn from you. I know I learned so much from our discussion. I just talking to you. Definitely business leaders who are watching, I will encourage them to, I'm going to include, before we get into, where can the people find you? How can they connect with you, Steve?
Well, they can find me on my company website, optimusperformance.ca. My YouTube channel, I publish a weekly YouTube video around the topics we're discussing. So I have several hundred videos up on YouTube. I also offer tools for free download, like job description template, goal planning worksheet. I have a lot of free tutorials. And I also have a few paid ones on how to hire, the hiring process, hiring and selection of new employees. I have one on goal setting is another one, performance management. So I have several that can be purchased very inexpensively. And so the best place, I guess, is my website. There's articles that go with my YouTube videos on the blog section of my website. And there's a slew of great YouTube videos with a lot of good information that people. So you just search Stephen Goldberg on YouTube and you should find me.
I'm going to include the links to all of those, resources on your website and YouTube and your podcast and your website below the video as well. People can click a button and they can connect with you. You've been doing, this podcast and discussions for much longer than, I recently started. And I learned so much from having a discussion. Every time I have a discussion with somebody, I take away more than anybody else would take away. So want to get your take on it. How do you like those discussions and what do you find interesting in those, the interviews or discussion, whether in a podcast or YouTube?
Well, I love it. I love interacting with people. We go back to my assessment, the 6 occupational interest areas that we measure. People is one of my top 3. So people, creative, that's why I like making videos, and business or enterprising. And that's why I like working with people to solve business issues, and I like to sell. So it's my drive, it's my passion. Once you find out what's driving somebody, you have to have the right drive for the job, because then it's not like work. And if you give them interesting challenges, they feel enriched every day. They feel like they're growing. And that's, when I interview people that are looking to shift their jobs, the number one thing, people that are in good jobs, they say, well, I don't feel like I'm growing anymore, So it's up to leaders to keep people challenged, keep them, hungry for the work, for learning, for growing, for using their skills, so they don't feel stale and start looking for a job elsewhere. So I do this, because like the YouTube videos, the podcast, it's all together, just because I want to share what I know, what I observe. Sometimes the topics I come up with is a result of an experience I had yesterday with a client and or with my own employee, and I want to just talk about it and share some tips around that, because if I'm going through this and my client's going through it, others are going through it as well. And I love to help people, and so I want to share whatever I can to help people see that personal development for everyone is really a key business contributor. It's not just blah, blah, but it actually drives business results when you have, it's like a horse race.
Mm-hmm.
The horse that wins or even a bike race. I'm watching the Tour de France now. Sometimes the winner, like in the Tour de France, it's when they have the sprints at the end, when it's a flatter stage, the sprinters, they can hit 70 kilometers an hour. Can you imagine going 70? And this is flat. It's not going downhill. I have trouble hitting that going downhill. But you need a photo finish. Same thing for horse racing, because sometimes it's just a nose in the horse race that wins.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes that horse, of course, genetics is there, but it's the training. It's the communication with the jockey who's the leader, right? All those things, it's a great analogy for developing people, because the jackpot for the number one is so much bigger than for the number 2 and 3, even though they get a piece of the purse.
Yeah.
Number one wins big. So if you want to win big, do the best practices, develop yourself as a leader, hire the right person for the job, and invest in training them. Keep them close to you emotionally, and you won't be training them for somebody else. You're going to invest them training for you and your company and for their well-being as well.
Very interesting. And the margin between number 2 and number 1 is very, very small. And as you mentioned, sometimes just a distance of your nose, it's a very small margin. You got to be worried of finding those skills.
But the money is huge. And the money is huge. Like, big difference.
Very interesting. Definitely. Okay, I'm going to include a link below all that, resources where to find you. I enjoy our discussion. I want to thank you for spending time with me. And a business leader who are watching, I will encourage you to, reach out to you for conversation. I enjoy our discussion, learn tons from you. So, connect with you, reach out for discussion, and see where the discussion take you. I think it's going to be a great discussion, whoever reaches out.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.